Welcome to Off the Canvas, the podcast dedicated to the passionate, curious and deeply skilled people at the heart of the Miro community. I'll be your host, Lee Jeffrey, and each episode I'll be sitting down with a different guest for a real, honest conversation. Different topics, different experiences and different perspectives. Hello and welcome back to Off the Canvas. This episode is about what it actually feels like to enter a new space for the first time. A workshop, a tool, a learning environment, a Miro board, whatever it is, there's a moment when someone arrives and feels like they belong there or not, like they can figure it out or can't, like it was made for them or made for someone else. That moment isn't accidental, it's designed or it isn't, and that's usually where the problem starts. And today we're talking about what it takes to get that moment right. So my guest is Vanessa Christina D'Souza, a learning experience design expert based in Berlin with over 14 years of experience spanning many fields before landing firmly in learning and development. She runs Yellow and New, a consultancy that brings a creative approach to learning design, blending facilitation, game-based learning and behaviour design to create experiences that actually change how people think and work. If you want a sense of Vanessa's world, she's the kind of person who designs a learner's journey the way a UX designer designs a product, from the moment someone arrives to the moment they know what to do next. And she is also a fellow Miro meetup host. In fact, Vanessa and I ended up running our meetups on the same day in July, completely by coincidence. And we recently connected at Canvas 26 in London, and I'm excited she can join us today. So Vanessa, welcome to Off the Canvas.
Thank you, Lee. I'm excited to be here. And thanks for the wonderful introduction.
So Vanessa, how you've been? So I know we connected at Canvas 26 and we also at the Miro meetups as well. How did they go?
It was a lot of fun, both the Miro Canvas where we met and the Miro meetup. So we both had it on the same day in July. It's always a new experience. So I go in, I design it and I show up and everyone's excited in the end of the experience. So I have the best time.
Great to see all those different Miro meetups happening across the world. I go on the community channel and there's lots going on there and trying to create that presence in Manchester. How is it in Berlin at the minute? Is that the first one you've done? Have you done a few? And what's the kind of Miro community look like in that space?
So the last one was my third one. So I started doing it last year in July. So this was the third one. And every time different people show up, as you might also have experienced, right? So new people show up. There are a few people who keep showing up. So it's wonderful to see familiar faces, new faces. And my goal for the meetup community is to get people across different professions together to connect and to learn. So I always design experiences related to that. And people show up. They don't really know what to expect. And I take them on this journey. So it's very, very exciting.
Have you got any more planned in the future? Or have you got one in the planning stage at the moment? Or have you got one penciled in?
Maybe one towards the end of this year.
Yeah. Get one final one for the year.
Yeah.
So amazing. I'll keep an eye on how they're going, and definitely I'll be probably reaching out for some tips as well if we can kind of share some workshops that worked well.
Yeah, definitely.
And just on Canvas itself, was the kind of a moment, maybe a conversation or maybe an idea that stuck with you after the event?
In Canvas 26, we spoke a lot about AI, of course. It was a hot topic, and also about team collaboration, so the people side of things. And because that's my expertise, I was very much interested in that. And we spoke about how humans now don't necessarily have a technology problem because they're using AI. We're building a lot of tools and prototypes, but it's more about the decisions that we have to make and how we work together to bring these things to life. So that is what I found very interesting about how to make human decisions more intentional when using AI products.
Yeah, there was lots to take away, wasn't there? And how did you find the different professions with that? I guess being in learning design, was there other learning designers that you connected with? Did you seem to learn, I guess, with me being in products and connecting with us as well? How did you find the different circles and maybe learning from people in the same circles as you and then maybe learning from people in other disciplines as well?
Yeah, it's always a big mix, and usually I'm the minority when I come to these events. So mostly I met people from UX, from product, from tech, and I also met a few people whom I've met before in the learning and development space, so they also attended the event. For me, it's always interesting to hear how different people use the tool and what challenges we face. I also get to learn about your world, so what you do and how you get people together. So that's always a lot of fun for me at these events.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think because I use it in the profession quite a lot for kind of designing experiences, but then I've maybe used the tool a little bit. I guess it's definitely when you step into leadership more on kind of the culture side and team get-togethers, and I think that does bring like a learning development and L&D into those environments. And I've definitely I'll learn from this conversation. I'd be interested to see some of your techniques and how I can take that away and use it for the team as well.
Brilliant.
So I guess before we get started, can you just quickly introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell us a bit about who you are and the kind of work that you get up to day to day.
Yes. So I'm Vanessa, as Lee introduced me already. I am based in Berlin. I'm a learning experience designer, and I have my own venture called Yellow and New. I work with different organizations. I help in designing learning programs, workshops, and other learning products and services, depending on what kind of challenges a company faces. So I do a lot of different things. I partner with different companies as well. The recent one is to support people and organizations in building their financial literacy and well-being. So yes, I'm very curious. I love to connect with different disciplines, as you already heard, and I'm always learning. So yeah, happy to be here.
Nice. And I guess it's quite, like I say, being curious there. And I guess if you're going into these organizations, they've all got different problems to solve, and you're able to kind of navigate that. And I guess we'll get into some of that conversation today about some of the techniques that you use to be able to connect with people. Let's break down that problem that we started with. We've run so many sessions, whether that be for workshops, whether it's people coming towards a new tool or it's a collaborative session. And we talked about the first time experience and that sometimes being overwhelming for people potentially. So what are the things that often go wrong in these sessions that you've kind of identified?
So there can be a lot of things that go wrong. Let me think of some of the common things that come up. So it also depends on what kind of experience we're designing. So if it's an online one, an offline one, what kind of learning product are we talking about? So let's take an example of workshops. So usually when we think about people being overwhelmed for these workshop sessions, it's often when they do not know what to do. So they show up and the journey is not clear to them. So you enter, maybe you're a stranger or you know other participants. Either way, you come in and you don't know where to start, who the people are, what am I supposed to do next? So that's definitely something I've observed when these experiences are not designed correctly.
Yeah, so it's like kind of that lack of clarity and understanding. And you talked about like in-person sessions versus remote sessions, or even I guess hybrid in the world that we're in at the moment.
Yeah.
Is the things that differ from those worlds around, I guess is that two different ways of planning those sessions? Do things work better in the real world than they do online? What have your kind of experiences been across those different channels?
Sometimes it's subjective. There are people who love doing in-person sessions than online sessions, right? And I think both have their own challenges and also advantages, of course. So when I design online sessions, I feel like there's more effort from my side because it's about engaging people on using a specific online tool. How are they supposed to navigate the tool, all the technicalities, and just reducing the fatigue because everyone's on their screen. So it comes with different challenges. So when I design online sessions, in person, I find it relatively easy to engage people. And of course, there are different things to consider. For example, a Miro meetup event is an in-person session in Berlin, and I get into too much detail. Sometimes it's about how would a person enter the space and where would they see me? How do I greet them and where do I direct them? That's also a part of an experience, right? So you don't want someone to enter a space and not know where to go. So an online challenge would be you get onto a Miro board and you don't know where to begin. So it's different.
It is, yeah. I've definitely seen that in that sometimes that disconnect online, because in person you've got that visual aspect. You can read like body language a lot more. You can't, people can't turn the cameras off and disappear in person unless they leave the room. Yeah, so it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to understand as a facilitator, as you get that kind of understanding of are people engaged in this, what are they up to, and it's more visual in a room. It can be challenging. Like I say, it's as a facilitator running those sessions, they are completely two different environments to prepare for, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I know we talked about, I guess, setting kind of sessions up and planning and giving that clarity to people. You know, you can do your best as a facilitator to make sure that works. But if someone is still overwhelmed, or is there signals where you can spot where people are overwhelmed and you can maybe help support them? Or is there visual cues that you can pick up either online or offline to show that to understand that someone's engaged and they're actually getting it?
It's interesting. This is a very interesting question, because for some people, they're able to spot these cues very easily. By people, I mean the people who run sessions like these. And some people, they don't get it. So to me, some of the obvious signs are when people are quiet or they are just reading their body language, as you said. So in person, it's relatively easier. Online, also, you can spot the cues. So understanding, are they based on the questions that they ask? So sometimes they're always saying, okay, I don't know where to click. I don't know where to go. Or they spend too much time, for instance, on a Miro board, an online session, where they're just reading instructions instead of participating and engaging with the rest of the group when you have activities. So it's mostly, for me, it's about reading the cues, online cues, and also seeing the performance as the session goes along in an online setting. In person, it's also easier because I can go to them and talk to them directly and find out how they feel, if they are comfortable, if things are clear. Online, I do ask the same questions, but it's different.
Yeah, because I think, like you talked about the Miro meetups, because I guess if you're walking around, you can get that one-to-one time and space with people, whereas online, unless you break out into a room, you can't get that one-to-one space. And I've seen it before where maybe you've started a workshop section and you've give all the instructions and you go, has anyone got any questions? And people are probably scared to say that they've got questions, but they've got questions. So I don't know if you find any alternate methods to be able to do that. If it's a technique like putting questions as sticky notes, or I don't using Miro Engage, for example, to get questions. What would you recommend there?
So what really helps is, let's take a step back. So when people enter the room or they enter an experience, I usually try to connect with them one-on-one, especially if it's in person. An in-person experience, you get to say hello and kind of build this connection. Online, you can do it in a different way. So before the session even begins, I call it pre-boarding. So before onboarding, you can send them a nice message and just connect with them and say, okay, so give them a high overview of, these are the tools we're going to use. This is what you can expect in session 1, and warm them up, and maybe even have a section on the Miro board where they already start introducing themselves and see something that's exciting, like create a space for that. So these are little things I do to warm people up so that they don't feel disengaged, and it makes it easier for them to ask questions, coming back to your point. So it makes them easier because they are already comfortable. They feel like they already know me as a trainer or facilitator, or both, whatever roles I'm playing. And they don't shy away from asking questions. So that has worked for me to build that connection beforehand or as soon as possible.
It's a great. I've just wrote some notes there. It's just like the pre-boarding, like people just setting that clarity up front, and it's a great space to be able to do that. And then, as I think you mentioned around like building connection, probably then enables engagement because it creates that psychological safety around people feeling a bit easier and got that connection with the group to be able to share. And I guess if you're there with people that you might be more likely to come forward. Whereas it's a completely new group, then that's a different beast in itself, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess just one question about kind of like problems here. So I'll be quite interested around like learning designers kind of communities. Is there any, do you connect with other learning designers as groups? Do you talk about some of these problems? Do you share ideas? How does that work for you?
Yeah, there are many communities online and in person as well here in Berlin. We talk about all kinds of learning and development and people topics, including how businesses are functioning these days, what's happening. in the world today, because that does affect the experiences we design or how we support people in their career development. So there are so many topics that we speak about. Yes, designing learning experiences is one of them. But I feel like there's a lot of focus on the content most of the time. Like, oh, we need to design this. Here we have this content. And I don't blame people for focusing a lot on content, but it does take away from the learner, the end user. As you probably know in your UX world, we're always talking about like, who are the users of this product and how do we make sure that they benefit from it? It adds value and they're successful in the end of this experience. So yes, we do talk about it quite a bit.
Yeah, you made a good point there, I think, around content, whether it is like training on a specific content and, it can be the best content in the world, but if it's not delivered in the right way and people don't engage with it and don't remember it, and it can't land that right. So like you said, it has to be packaged into that experience. I've seen different learning methods, maybe where we get a module to learn and we have to kind of self-learn online and it's like a video, but it doesn't maybe have the same impact when you maybe go in a room of people and that's delivered by a facilitator and you're able to engage with others and share stories, which is, I think, a little bit more powerful. It's probably a preferred way of learning that I prefer, rather than just being sent, going through kind of a video and that content again, but they're different experiences, aren't they?
Yeah. That's what I do in most of my work. I try to introduce a social learning element to it. So where you're learning from each other and you also have space to learn on your own. So it has to be a mix of experiences. There's no one way to learn, right? So yeah, it's good that you also enjoy social learning.
No.
It's great.
Okay, cool. So let's move into learning journey mapping as a technique. So are you able just to, for anyone who hasn't come across that, are you able just to overview what learning journey mapping is and why it matters?
Yeah, so I'm not sure many people use this at all, but I started to think of a learner's journey this way. So I got inspired by the product mindset. So design thinking, product mindset, thinking of your learners as your end users. And my journey through journey mapping began by designing this for customers. So I started doing customer journey mapping workshops. Then it moved on to employee experience journey mapping workshops. I have created a template in the Miroverse years ago, so it doesn't look too pretty, but it exists because I was very passionate about journey mapping. And now I use similar principles when I think of a learner's journey through any kind of learning experience. So it means that you think about what kind of problems you want to solve for learners and then slowly take steps back. So what does this learner need during the session, before the session, after the session? And also, how do you communicate throughout the session? So you might have the most amazing learning product or service out there, but then if you're not able to communicate it, then nobody knows the value of it. If you're not able to understand the challenges of a learner throughout the journey, then what are you designing for? So all these questions are considered when I map out a learner journey. I try to summarize it very quick, but yeah, this is how I look at journey mapping for learners.
It's a really nice technique. Yeah, I'll share that link in the resources as well. I think obviously coming from a product mindset, seeing how that might adapt into kind of a learning experience, it's really intriguing. I think a question there I would have around, I guess, as you're mapping out these journeys, there's probably things that you kind of replicate across those journeys which are common, which are maybe how to communicate our key principles, and then there probably is differences there depending on the audience, the industry, the people. I don't know if you're able to just maybe go into that a little bit more around are there any common trends that you would see across them, and this might already be in the template, across that journey, and where are the areas that maybe change quite a bit depending on the audience?
So interestingly, I do focus on personas. So defining these personas, and they can be similar across industries and career levels. So you can talk about leaders or people at different career levels. Who are these people? What are their backgrounds? So it does change in terms of the environment, the context. So that's the biggest difference, what I've observed. So what are the different business events happening at that moment? How do their teams look like? Those are the subtle differences you see across personas. But generally, these journeys, if you're talking about a workshop or a learning program, they always start with onboarding and then they end with offboarding. So how do you onboard these learners? And I use the term pre-boarding. Before they even show up in person, what do you share with them? What kind of communication you share with them to make them comfortable? So these milestones are always fixed or similar across every experience. I usually look at it as in terms of these milestones, and then personas, and content always differs. So content changes, environment changes, but milestones and personas are similar across experiences.
That's interesting. I know you spoke there about kind of pre-boarding again, and then you went into kind of onboarding. How do you maybe look at how someone onboards and how they feel through that process? Because you spoke about getting them through that pre-boarding experience so that the clarity is there. And then once you get in the session, I guess those first 5, 10, 15 minutes, is that the crucial spot to make sure that you maybe go on and set the right footing within the environment? Is there any techniques you use to get started quickly or that you can maybe share?
So the first impression matters a lot, like we all know. That is what I think about every time I design any experience. So what is the first impression this piece of communication might have on this learner based on the context that I know of, whatever mapping I've done? How would they feel, think, and what should they do when they see the first email from me? So that is what I really think of as a first step. And I also, in every experience, I think of, like I said, personas. So from the loudest person in the room who might show up to the person who might be an introvert and takes time or doesn't want to share too much. These are the little things that maybe not so little things that I consider when I design every little element on this journey map, especially in the onboarding phase. It could be, for example, if someone's new to using Miro, or I send a link to a Miro tutorial from the Miro Academy saying, in case you haven't used Miro, you can watch this 2-minute video and play around with the little tools on Miro. These little things matter because I have seen people come onto these Miro boards and really not know what to do, and they get so overwhelmed, and it just impacts the start of their journey. And it's hard to get them to engage with me because they're already so annoyed and overwhelmed. So I try to reduce that by using these few techniques.
I mean, when you was breaking that down, then it got me thinking about, I guess, if you're looking at the outcome of a session and you're looking at the experience that you're trying to give, and you would maybe measure that by how successful the session was. But then it got me thinking there is kind of maybe micro journeys in there around, like you mentioned, the extrovert versus the introvert. So maybe if you say you've got 7 people joining a session, all their journeys are going to be different because they're all individual. Maybe there are moments in the session where they come together and they get interlinked. I'm just interested around that mapping. Does that go to a level of mapping out different levels of those journeys in those personas and what might happen differently, or is it a singular? It's quite interesting how you might break that down.
Yeah. I usually think about it. I also consider content. It's not that content is bad, right? So you have to always look at the content, the learning objectives that need to be successfully achieved at the end of the session. And then I walk backwards. So I make sure that even if it's a mixed group of people, when they join an activity together, it is broken down in a way that they know exactly what step 1 is to step 4, for instance. So step 1, I usually make sure that people have moments to reflect individually before they jump into a group setting. So I always say, okay, this is what is expected from you. This is the goal of this activity. And you have 2 to 3 minutes to just think over it and write down what you think, and then get into the group work. And even before group work starts, usually tell them, introduce yourselves. If you don't know each other, talk to each other. Because more often than not, I've seen people just being put into groups in sessions, in new sessions, and they're just expected to talk. And these few minutes really matter before you even get started in building new things or answering big questions or sharing your challenges, which might be really personal and difficult for you. So I don't know if I answered your question, Lee.
No, you did. Yeah, it got me I was thinking about going on to kind of icebreakers then when you started talking about getting people talking for the first time, and this could probably cause quite a debate. So it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on kind of how you introduce kind of icebreakers or maybe moments for people to I guess create that connection. How do you navigate that in your sessions?
Icebreakers are always fun. So in person, I use different icebreakers. Online, I use different icebreakers. In person, maybe let me think of the Miro event I did. So at Miro, one of the events was as simple as, I think 30 something people showed up to this event, like the second event. And I said, okay, so all of you are here because you love Miro. So let's get up and talk to the person next to you whom you have never met before and tell them, what do you use Miro for, who you are, and what else would you like to learn? So I give them a structure, and they're there because they have a shared love for Miro. So it becomes easier to break the ice and say, okay, I like this. This is what I want. This is what I expect. Keeping it also very simple and easy. Like in person, I give out cards. Sometimes, these cards with different artistic images, and then I ask them to introduce themselves and tell me the story behind why they selected a card. So to keep it easy, to keep it light in the beginning always helps to break the ice. And then you can get onto the difficult topics.
No, that's a good technique. Keep it simple and keep it a common theme. And I like the way you talked about, especially in person, which we probably don't do as much nowadays, is that physical aspect. Because I've done like Lego series playing in the past, and Bicablo as well, which is quite big in Germany, which is they've got the sketch cards, and we put them on the table and told people to pick the cards that resonated with their values, and everyone picked 3 cards and then spoke about that particular card. And I think, there's definitely nice ways, isn't there, to bring that physical element into those environments.
Definitely.
Let's move on to, I guess, Miro as a learning space. And we've talked about Miro meetups and Miro a little bit. Do you think there's something about kind of a visual canvas that could help potentially reduce overwhelm? Maybe it could increase overwhelm. How does a Miro canvas give someone maybe a sense of clarity, or like some of the features that might help in those scenarios? But I guess typically in an online session, or if you are doing it in person.
Used it in person for the Miro meetups event, and I've also used it online. So online, because now there are so many new features, especially Miro Engage, it makes it easier to engage people throughout the session, of course. But what I've realized that sometimes less is more. People have a tendency to say, we want this person to follow 5 steps in half an hour for this activity. It's not always possible. So I always look at the instructions that I put on there in Miro, keeping it clean, keeping it simple. Where do they begin? Where do they end? Do they have space to type? And also, like I mentioned earlier on, introduce yourselves. As simple as that. Put an instruction, introduce yourselves, and even the timing. How much time is this going to take? Because some people, from experience, I know they always want to know, how much time do I have? So that helps to reduce the overload, the overwhelm. And that's for online Miro sessions. I just try to keep it clean. And some people still struggle to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned before about the crossover between like design thinking, and you've already mentioned like, I guess, journey mapping and that kind of UX-centric side. And then as you get into the actual Miro board itself, you're coming into kind of like the interface and I guess into like UI design and structure there. And it's so important, the language being used, like you say, the keeping it simple. I can see all the crossovers there from design, because it is designing an experience, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I love it. It's so exciting.
I think, when you open a Miro board for the first time and it is blank there and there's a blank canvas, and then actually maybe when you do end up creating that template or that workshop and you've got this thing that you've created, it's a bit of a journey, isn't it? Is there a specific feature in Miro that you couldn't live without? Is the one that you use all the time in sessions, or is there any new ones that you might be using as well?
Can't live without. That's a big one. But the new ones, I use the new ones a lot. I really enjoy using the, what is it called? The Miro Engage, the polls, the questions. That's really nice, especially in the beginning, to break the ice. I use the flip cards. I use Miro AI. I use plenty of them. But yeah, I like the talk track the most. That's the new one. I think it's really helpful, especially when you're working async with people, with stakeholders, and you want to take them through what you've built, especially for people who don't know Miro, like how to use Miro a lot, or they don't have time. They would rather just watch a video and be taken through it. Yeah, talk track.
Yeah,
That's
lots of different features there. I use TalkTrack quite a lot, and I think you mentioned before pre-boarding, and I imagine TalkTracks just enable that so much easier. Rather than them having to engage with an email or a message, they can have to go on there. And I guess that's where you start. You talked before about building that connection and people having first impressions, maybe of the board or yourself as a trainer and facilitator. And I guess that's where they can get that physical connection, where they can start hearing from you and have that personal touch. So I really like that. We had an onboarding document in our company around, when new designers joined the team, and it was just like a Google Doc, which was like 7 pages long, and it was full of text, especially for a designer as well. So we did actually create an onboarding Miro board, and it had talk tracks in it, but it had it from different people in the different disciplines. You had like the head of design, you had someone in UX, someone in research, someone in content, and they was able to come and actually start getting that personal touch and meeting people for the team. So that was a bit similar, so that way you can kind of start raising that engagement, which is a really nice touch.
That's a very well designed learning journey, Lee. That sounds amazing.
I know. I'll have to get it as a template on the Miroverse. I've not done one for a while. Yeah, I'm definitely lacking in that space at the moment.
Me too.
I know, it's too busy. So what do you think of when you're designing a Miro board? You talked about someone who's unfamiliar with the tool and how it's going to land with them for the first time. So you mentioned about kind of talk tracks and structure. Is there anything else that you can consider when people are coming in fresh into these environments?
On the board, I usually hide things. So even if I've created a lot, because
hide the noise.
Yeah, a lot of it. Recently, for the Miro meetups, I created a bit of mystery. So I put big locks on sections, and I said, we're going to reveal this only after you complete this. So they completed the task, and then they had to come to me physically because we were in a physical space, and I gave them a little envelope with other instructions. So I made it very like a mixed experience. It wasn't only about using the board. But yes, I like to create mystery and intrigue when a person just joins the board. So locking sections, saying that this will be revealed on this date, and also clearly marking the point where you start and where the journey is going. So people know that, okay, this is a journey. We're going to go through this step by step. And yeah, it helps a lot, especially when it's a program or a session is online. You need to think of these moments of excitement and curiosity, and how do you keep them engaged? So, and also just keep it simple, not overcomplicated or over-designed.
No, I love that. It's like keeping that anticipation. I guess it gets into like it's a gamification around like people going on that journey and unlocking things. And I think you said earlier about keeping things simple, but if there is quite a lot of content and it is quite complex, I think being able to hide sections does kind of remove that, so you understand there's something there, but it's not kind of distracting. It's a nice way when you've got maybe complex boards and locking things down. It's something rather than the amount of times I've been on a board and someone's come in and started moving stuff around. It's like, Control Z is your friend.
I also put these sections where you record resources, or there's a parking lot. Like, okay, we have these ideas. So these things also help, especially when people within the group have certain resources to share. So they know exactly where to put them, and you can build this continuity and also bring it up in the next session. So there is a continuous learning journey, and also to go back to what they've learned is just easier to have things in place.
Yeah, it's super important, isn't it? Because I guess when you're structuring that session and you've got those topics and you're taking people through that journey, there is those little side conversations that happen. There's those maybe magic moments or aha moments that come up, which you capture. Oh, I didn't really think about capturing that, and then but that needs somewhere to live on the board. Yeah, it's a good tip. Also, I guess if we start looking at, practical takeaways. So if someone's listening to this and they're maybe designing a workshop tomorrow or next week, and or maybe whether that is a design thinking workshop or it is a learning experience, where would you ask them to start? I know you mentioned around the mapping exercises. So where would you start planning?
I would start with understand what problem you're trying to solve. So yes, people might come to you and say, we need this workshop or this training, but sometimes that's not the solution. So in our learning and development world, we always joke about, someone comes to us and says, we need another workshop, but it's not always a workshop because we have a suite of offerings, right? It can be e-learnings, mentoring, coaching, knowledge sharing sessions, full-blown learning programs. So understanding what problem you need to solve can help you understand which product or offering you need to design. So that would be step one for me. Then you can go into the personas and then the content on the side. And understanding the context. Yes, of course. Understanding the context, getting those answers up front, also understanding things like business events, what's happening in the company. Because when people come into the session and something is happening, you should know. For instance, if there's a reorganization or people have gotten laid off or there are new people coming into the team, all of this impacts how a person experiences their journey. Of course, I cannot control everything as a designer, but just that awareness can really help me as a designer know what to account for, what's in my control, what's not, and also communicate with stakeholders saying that this might be a challenge that you need to address, and this is what we're focusing on with the participant, but then they need more support here. So it can be a very holistic experience depending on how much work we put into it in understanding all these aspects.
No, it's a really good approach. That again, the synergy between kind of designing experiences around understanding what that problem is. And you made a great point there about the format and what solves that problem. It's not always kind of a workshop. There's different methods to do that. It's again, you mentioned a really good point about the context of the environment, kind of meeting, chatting with stakeholders, understanding what's happening in the organisation. Because there's nothing worse than is if you're running that session and then there's something that misaligns with what's happened. I guess if we talk about trying to simplify as experience for participants, is there one kind of common mistake people might make, or is there a common mistake you could make when you're trying to simplify? I know you mentioned about kind of removing noise, taking things away. Is there anything that sticks out that you would try to avoid?
I would try to avoid, I mentioned this before about the instructions, right? Too many instructions is a bad thing. So you have to think about it from a persona point of view. So there's for instance, if it's a very busy leader coming into your session and you tell them to read all these instructions and they will just think, why am I doing this? I don't want to read this. I've had a really busy day. So also considering what time you put these sessions in their calendar, it makes a huge difference to how they show up. So to how they show up and how they read these instructions. So yes, less is more. And also giving them the agency. So if there's an activity, instead of telling them you need to follow these rules in order to get this output, give them a choice to either, okay, you can follow this scenario or come up with your own, because people love to talk about themselves and love to share their challenges. And then if people cannot come up with anything, they have a choice. Giving them agency is also very important. Yeah,
good tips. It got me thinking there about, and you talked about instructions into like I guess content design, micro copy, UX content, UX copy around like the things that you're saying. And I guess language as well would be a big one around how people understand certain terms or how they kind of understand. I guess that's where they would seek that clarification if something isn't resonating with them, I guess.
Yeah, you just reminded me about AI, like using AI to come up with these things. Of course, it's great. I use it too. But then you have to always check and understand the tone and refine it. Because if someone gets onto a board and can tell that it's all AI generated, that can put someone off completely. Oh, yes, that is also important to consider. You do not want it to sound like an AI. So, no.
No, I guess if you think about the conversation we've had there around that building connection, we talked about like the talk track videos, someone being able to understand and get to know you and have that first impression. And I guess if you've done that work for them to build that trust with you early on, and like you say, they come onto that board and then nothing sounds like you and it doesn't feel like the same person, there's that, you kind of lose all that trust, isn't there? So that experience needs to flow through, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. So I guess I was looking to wrap up a bit. So if there was, I'd say like a silver bullet, if there was one magic tip that you could give for somebody to meaningfully improve an experience with our participants, what would you be? I guess if you was kind of using like a mentorship tip to people, what would you go to?
I would say advocate for your learners. So yes, there are a lot of business challenges we want to solve. We want to improve the performance of the business, but also think about the person you're designing this for. And that could make any experience really stick in the end of the day. So advocate for them.
I love that. Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? Again, if you go into outcomes of workshops and I guess people going through that content and actually learning about that content, but actually how they've maybe personally grown through that experience. Maybe in that session, they was able to speak up a little bit more and give their opinion, and they really feel empowered by doing that. And that's all kind of personal growth as well. So yeah, really resonated. I'd definitely get on that one. So think about your users. Cool. So yeah, that's flew by. No, thank you so much. I've taken away quite a lot of good tips there, and it's amazing the synergy between the two worlds as well. So I'll definitely be taking some of this into some of the things that I create for the team going forward. So yeah, just before we close out there, where can people find out more about you and more about your work as well?
Yes, so you can find more about me on LinkedIn for sure. Quite active. I try to be quite consistent with sharing what I do, and also my website. So you might find it in the links below, but my website, Yellow and New, I do keep it updated with my services, what I offer, the people I work with. So if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll drop those links in as well, and the link to the Miro board as well. I can share those. But no, amazing. No, thank you so much. So yeah, that brings us to the end of our third episode now. So yeah, thanks for listening. And yeah, thank you, Vanessa, again for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe and follow us wherever you're tuning in from. And look out for future episodes where we'll be meeting more people from the Miro community. Bye for now, and hopefully see you again next time.
Bye. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you for listening to Off the Canvas, the podcast dedicated to the passionate, curious and deeply skilled people at the heart of the Miro community. Please like, share and follow us to stay updated on future episodes, and join us again soon for more insightful conversations with the community.